All right, I'm going to tell you a story the way it actually felt. Messy, hot, way too human. Not like a press release, not like a speech, just one man trying to make sense of a day that almost broke him, and a whisper that put him back together. The pen touched the paper, and a stranger's voice saved my life. Don't sign. It's a trap. If it were you, what would you have done? Sign anyway, because everyone was watching, or pull the pen back and risk looking weak in front of the whole city. I froze. Cameras flashed like lightning without rain. People laughed a little too loudly. The boardroom smelled like victory and expensive cologne. It should have been the happiest room in Lagos that afternoon, top floor of Okafor Holdings sun, pouring through glass skyline burning gold like it was rooting for me. Months of negotiations with Titanium Industries, a foreign heavyweight that promised the world. New markets global reach the kind of merger that turns your last name into a brand. All I had to do was sign. 3 letters. That was the distance between Raymond Okafor regional success story and Raymond Okafor international headline. And then a cleaning lady in a blue uniform leaned close to my chair, eyes down, voice steady, and set everything on fire with a whisper. Don't sign. It's a trap. Yeah, that happened. Here's the part you don't see in those glossy founder stories. The heartbeat in your ears when you realize the room is celebrating a future that might not include you, the heat that climbs your neck when your best friend is grinning at you like a brother and a stranger is telling you he's the knife. My partner Ben patted my shoulder and murmured, "We're untouchable after this, Ray." Marcus from Titanium slid the contract toward me, accent smooth as glass, crowd clapping, as if I'd already written my name. Untouchable. Sounds nice until you learn the difference between untouchable and unseeable. You can't touch something. You can't see clearly. You know what I mean. 5 minutes, I said, and the room tilted. Marcus tried to keep me seated with that polished tone people use when your free will is inconvenient. Ben laughed like I was being dramatic. Everyone else checked their watches because rich people pretend not to care about time and then they buy very expensive watches to prove they do. I stepped out anyway. The hallway was quieter, colder. The kind of place where truth fits in the air again. The cleaning lady pushed a cart with that slow, careful grace you use when you don't want to bump the world that doesn't notice you. You, I said more sharply than I intended, come with me. We ducked into a break room no one thinks about until the coffee machine dies. I folded my arms to feel like a man who couldn't be shaken by a whisper, and then I said the only thing that made sense. Talk. She told me her name was Rose. Her hands were trembling a little, but her voice wasn't. I've heard things, she said softly. Conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. Your partner Ben and that Titanium man, they're planning to trap you. The contract is not what you think it is. If you sign, you'll lose your company. Pattern interrupt. Wait. A cleaner walks into your future and tells you it's a cliff. You believe her or you throw her out. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because fear sometimes puts on the mask of laughter. Why should I believe you? I asked. She didn't flinch. Because I have proof, she said. I can't show you here. Meet me at 7, same room. She didn't plead, she didn't perform. She just put the truth on the table like a glass of water and waited to see if I'd drink. I gave her the kind of look executives think is protective, and women who have been ignored their whole lives recognize instantly. 7, I said. But if you're lying, you've worked your last day here. She nodded like someone who had made peace with worse ultimatums than mine. Back in the boardroom, laughter sounded thinner, the light a shade too bright. I closed the contract. We're reviewing clauses again, I said in a tone that belongs to a man who still owns his name. Marcus's smile cracked. Ben's eyebrows dipped. Just a flicker, almost nothing. We adjourned. People left in small storms, heels hitting tile like hail. 7 p.m. Lagos glowed like a bowl of embers outside the window. The building was mostly empty, just the hum of lights and the distant rhythm of a city that never waits for anyone's heartbreak. Rose sat in the break room with a small backpack, shoulders squared the way you square them when fear hasn't got permission to speak. She unzipped the bag and pulled out her phone. "Listen," she said. "Audio." A faint room tone and then a voice I knew like my own. "Ben." Another voice. A woman's sleek and familiar in a way that made my stomach go cold. "Victoria. My ex. The one who told me I was too ordinary for the life she wanted." I hadn't heard that voice in 2 years, and somehow it still knew how to find the soft parts of me and press. You ever had an old version of yourself walk right back into your present and try to take a seat at your table? Uninvited. Like it owns the chair, yeah, that. Ben's voice. "Once he signs, we'll have full control of the assets." Victoria's voice. "Are you sure Raymond won't suspect Ben? He's always been naive." It was true when you dated him, and it's true now. Her little laugh after that. You don't forget a sound like that, you just bury it under promotions and dinners and deals until somebody digs it back up. Rose showed me screenshots. Contract red lines, version names, clause numbers that looked harmless and were anything but. My 60% control quietly turned to 20 indemnity language twisted like wire arbitration, slid to a jurisdiction where I'd be a stranger paying to be ignored. She handed me bank transfer records. Titanium money sliding into Ben's personal account like a snake under a door. Numbers don't plead or exaggerate. They just tell on you. That's why criminals hate accountants. "Why help me?" I asked. Because that's what men with power ask when someone with none gives them a gift. "Why risk your job for me?" She blinked, then met my eyes with a steadiness that made me feel small and seen at the same time. "Because you treat people with respect," she said, simple as a sunrise. "And because I know what this looks like from the other side. They think we don't hear them because we mop their floors. We hear everything." She told me who she had been before the blue uniform. A corporate finance analyst at a top firm smart enough to map cash flows in her sleep, pushed out by a culture that wouldn't say poor out loud, but said it with dress codes and accents and laughter in the wrong places. She took the cleaning job because it came with health insurance, and her little sister Maria needed meds that didn't care about dreams. I barely slept that night. I read the contract line by line, compared it to the screenshots, watched how a trap can be built out of 3 commas and 1 number, and a sentence tucked where no one's eyes ever go. Dawn found me red-eyed and certain of 2 things. I wasn't signing anything, and I needed to know who Rose really was without the uniform. HR confirmed it. King's College Lagos Business Administration, corporate finance, 2 years at a consulting firm that thinks excellence comes with a last name. I walked out of the HR office with a file that made no sense alongside a mop bucket, and down the hall came Ben, smiling the way you smile when you believe the world is a stage and you were born to own the spotlight. He glanced past me, not at me, past me, as if he could see the after-image of a truth standing behind my shoulder. "Meeting rescheduled to 3, he said, voice dipped in that casual honey he used when he wanted people to agree and not remember they had. "I like to inspect the cleaning," I said, and he laughed like we were still boys sharing noodles in a 1-bedroom apartment and dreaming about marble lobbies. "Now pay attention to this. Courage isn't a roar. It's a quiet decision to be recorded." The next morning, my phone was already rolling in my jacket, a second recorder humming in my briefcase. If Ben wanted a public theater, I was going to keep the ticket stubs. Sir Mr. Yuba is here with Chief Thompson urgent. They came in with a tablet and a performance. We have a thief, Ben said, sorrow painted on like stage makeup. One of the cleaners, Rose Williams. He swiped through CCTV stills that showed her entering executive offices, standing near drawers that were slightly open near desks where people keep secrets. The angles suggested never proved. That's how framing works. It gives your brain an easy path to a conclusion and lets your mouth do the rest. Cash from my wallet? Ben said, voice heavy with moral injury. A watch from Marcus's desk. And from you, Ray. Check your top right drawer. I pulled open the drawer where I kept an emergency USB with passwords and codes. It was gone. The kind of gone that makes your jaw clench and your vision sharpen and your heart sit down. Bring her in, Ben said, and the door opened. Rose walked in with guards on either side, uniform, neat hands clasped like she was borrowing grace from somewhere quiet. I didn't steal anything, she said, firm and low. Ben tilted his head, that rehearsed pity back on his face. At 6 p.m. in executive offices you had no business in, he said. Snooping, stealing, copying files to USB. Her eyes flashed, and for a second I could see the analyst under the apron, the woman who used to lead with a spreadsheet and finish with a conclusion no one could argue with. That's a lie, she said, and her voice cracked just enough to make the human in me want to tear the room apart. Pattern interrupt. Stop the tape. Do you think that's fair? That a cleaner's word can be drowned out by a man with a tablet and a good suit? That a woman's future can be balanced on a screenshot, cropped just right? Be honest. In your company, in your school, in your family, whose voice gets believed without evidence and whose truth needs a parade of receipts. Ben outside. Now. He didn't want to go. I didn't ask twice. The hallway swallowed us, the door closed, and the masks got tired of being masks. What are you doing? I asked, voice low enough to be a blade. He blinked like the lights were too bright. Protecting the company, he said. Cut the lies. I answered. I know about titanium, the modified contract, the transfers. Victoria. His face drained like someone pulled the plug. Everything I said and watched him decide between doubling down or telling the truth loud enough to be its own confession. He chose envy. I'm tired, he said, a hard laugh with nothing funny inside. Tired of living in your shadow. Magazine covers with your face. Awards with your name. We built this together and I'm still the assistant in everyone's mind. The quiet one. The nobody. You don't think I deserve more? He stepped closer. Victoria showed me I could have it. Half the company should have been mine in truth, but you always had the final say. Well, not anymore. There it was. Not a corporate plot. Not a foreign conspiracy. Not even pure greed. Envy with a pen. Resentment in a tie. I lifted my phone. Every word I said. The color tore back into his face, this time red. You recorded me, he spat. Every word I repeated. And the woman you tried to bury, to keep your hands clean. She's the reason I know the truth. She has more loyalty in one fingertip than you had in 15 years. We walked back in. Release her, I told Thompson. He hesitated the way men do when they aren't sure which power will win. Now, I said, and his hands fell away from the cuffs that were never on her wrists, but hung in the air anyway. I turned to Rose, feeling the room shift, the story rewrite itself in real time. How would you like a real job? One that matches your qualification and your courage. I need a CFO I can trust. Are you serious? She whispered. Completely, I said. And your sister? We're setting up a healthcare fund, and her surgery will be the first expense we cover. Pattern interrupt. Justice can look like paperwork, and sometimes the most radical thing you can do is sign a different name on a different line. Ben stood in the doorway, face wrecked by a storm he started. You have 30 minutes to pack, I told him. After that, you're trespassing. He left with security, throwing words that hit the air and died because the truth had already filled the room. 3 months can change a city if you're paying attention. Maria's surgery was scheduled. The office felt lighter, less performative. People started saying good morning to the folks they used to step around. We put a photo wall in the lobby. Not just executives, everyone. Cleaners, guards, receptionists. If that sounds corny to you, it's because you've never watched a thief look at a wall like that and realize the building has eyes. Rose dove into ledgers and contracts like she was born to dismantle polite fraud. She exposed 2 little schemes that had been nibbling at our profits for years. She renegotiated supplier terms with a smile and a spreadsheet that left no room for poetry or theft. Profit ticked up. Culture got braver. You can't fake that kind of tide. But you didn't come here for tidy. You came for the twist right. Here's the twist. We thought the story was over when we fired Ben. It wasn't. He launched a shiny new firm with Victoria, Titan Edge Holdings. All buzzwords and borrowed ideas, the kind of branding that thinks an English name and a clean logo can hide an old soul with dirty hands. There were whispers they used stolen client lists, repackaged our proposals, pasted our numbers into their slide decks, put new fonts on the same scams. Push now, and they'll scatter, Rose said one night, tapping a table covered in audit trails, contracts, bank records, metadata that sang like a choir if you knew how to listen. Wait, and they'll hang themselves with a longer rope. You're sure? I asked. She looked at me the way she did the first night. Not pleading, not guessing, just seeing. I've never been more sure. Mini call to action. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. 10 minutes before Ben's big press conference, journalists across the city got an anonymous package. Screenshots, transfer logs, voice clips with dates, side-by-side contracts with version histories that told the story without adjectives. The EFCC didn't wait for the ribbon cutting. They walked into Titan Edge like a cold front left with laptops, folders, and 2 people who had laughed about my supposed naivete into a cleaner's phone microphone, like the universe didn't love irony. Cameras caught them in cuffs. I watched a clip where a reporter asked Mr. Yuba, "Did you falsify merger documents and embezzle funds?" He said we were lying. He said this was a smear. He said my name like an accusation. Raymond. Funny how people who never said your name in gratitude say it clearly when they need a villain. The city roared for a week, then whispered for 2 more. That's how news works. Loud, then low, then gone. Meanwhile, in a hospital that did not care about headlines, a doctor stepped into a waiting room and said, "She's going to make it. Maria would live." Rose folded into herself for a second, then stood taller than I'd ever seen her. We drove home with the windows down because sometimes air feels like grace and you want it to touch your face to prove it's real. One Friday late, the office quiet and honest, Rose brought me audit reports, set them down, and smiled in that way she does when numbers have done what they should. "Everything's clean," she said. "You've transformed this place," I told her. "We both did," she answered, and then laughed because old habits put a "sir" on the end of every sentence, even when you don't need to wear it anymore. I told her to stop calling me sir. She told me to stop being charming when she was trying to focus. That's when I finally told the truth I'd been pretending not to feel. "You changed me," I said, voice a little uneven. "You made me remember why I started this. Not to be the richest, but to be decent. You reminded me that power without compassion is just noise. She looked down, then up, eyes shining in a way that didn't need tears to be bright. And you reminded me not everyone in power wants to crush the floor just to hear it crack, she said. I took her hand. Simple as that. Not a speech. Not fireworks. A man and a woman standing in a glass office high above a city that had almost broken them both in different ways, choosing to build something honest. A year later, we launched the Okafor and Williams Foundation. Maria ran on stage at rehearsal with a ribbon like a banner and tripped and popped right back up because kids know something adults forget. Falling isn't the end if the floor is yours. We announced grants for surgeries like hers, for kids whose names would never trend and whose lives would never make a business case. Reporters asked questions, cameras flashed, donors clapped. I told the story straight. A woman the world ignored saved my company with a whisper. Now she's my partner in business and in life. If that makes you roll your eyes, you've probably never needed saving. If that makes you cheer, take care. Cheering is easy, staying is harder. And because every story that feels good owes you a complication, here's mine. After the gala, a journalist pulled me aside. "Do you worry you set a dangerous precedent?" he asked, pen ready. "Elevating someone that far, that fast. And now that you're in a relationship, how do you guard against favoritism?" It burned a little, not because it was unfair to ask, but because he asked it like she hadn't earned every inch. We put structures in place. Independent board approvals for her role. I recused myself from compensation decisions. We wrote governance that squeaks when you touch it. We did the work. It still lingers, though, that question, not just about us, about the world. How do you make room for love and leadership without punishing competence? How do you honor what someone has done when you also love who they are? Tell me, is it more ethical to keep the door shut because people might talk, or to open it and build walls of glass so they can see there's nothing to hide? Pattern interrupt. Here's the part where I ask you to argue with me. Because underneath all the boardroom drama and the police raids and the happy ending with a foundation ribbon, there's a quieter question. Whose voice counts in your world? A cleaner said, "Don't sign, it's a trap," and I listened. Not because I'm noble, because I'd been hungry once, and hunger teaches you to listen to the person who knows where the food actually is. Too many people in glass offices forget that. They forget the elevator goes both ways. Let me bring you back to the beginning for 1 second. The boardroom hot with light, the city spread out like a promise, a pen in my hand, heavy enough to crush the next 10 years if I pressed it down. In another life I sign and I lose everything, slowly, then quickly, then completely. In this life, a woman in a blue uniform risked her job, her safety, her future to save a man whose face she had probably dusted on posters she couldn't afford to read. She said 5 small words, and a building full of big ones had to sit down and respect them. If it were you, what would you have done? Would you have listened for 5 minutes? Or would you have called security and signed anyway? Do you think it's fair that some voices have to bring proof while other voices get believed on tone alone? Tell me the truth. Tell me how it works where you are. In your office, your school, your house. Whose whispers stop the pen? I'm Raymond, and this is me telling you what the headlines won't. That the smallest voice in the room might be the reason your building is still standing. That envy wears nice suits. That courage sometimes smells like bleach and coffee and late nights. That love can grow where power didn't plan to plant it, and when it does, it needs guardrails, not gossip. Stick around. Not because an algorithm wants you to, but because the next story might be yours, and if you've ever been the one with the whisper, someone out there needs your courage today. If this hit you, share it with a friend who's one signature away from a mistake. Drop a comment And tell me what you would have done. Tell me where you stand on the messy line between merit and love, rank and respect. Push back if you think I'm wrong. Defend me if you think I'm right. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've got a story like this, a whisper that rerouted your life, put it below so the rest of us can learn. Like the video if you found something true in it. Subscribe if you want more stories, told the way they felt. And more than anything, don't ignore the voice that doesn't sound like power. Sometimes that voice is the only thing keeping you from signing your future away. You know what I mean?